Thank you. Okay. Well, with that applause, are there any questions? You know, I have to tell this group, it's nice to be back in New Hampshire. As when I was a young lad, and this goes back to the 30s, before all of you were born, my mother and father used to send me to a summer camp at Lake Spofford, near Keene, New Hampshire. And of course, Keene's big bragging rights in those days were it had the widest city street in the world. And I don't know if that still holds or not. But they sent me to this camp because there were 400 priests that used to go there every summer. And they said, oh, this will be good training for the lad. Well, I want you to know they failed. Well, I've got to tell you, your presence here really says it's all. You understand, Houston, we have a problem. And I have to tell you, never in my lifetime did I believe I would witness this great country being taken down and withdrawn from our world leadership role by our own administration. Unbelievable. And you know, with regard to Iran, I've been chasing those ragheads for over 35 years. And when it comes to Iran, we've had many opportunities to change the course of history. And it hasn't mattered whether it's been a Republican or Democratic administration. They all failed, primarily due to being sabotaged from within. And let me give you a few examples. When the Ayatollah Khomeini took over our embassy in November 1979, I was the director of political and military affairs for the Joint Chiefs. And then the chairman, Davy Jones, called me up and he says, what can we do? I said, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take Carg Island. And of course, he looked at me and said, where is it? So I showed him, and of course, Carg Island is their main oil exporting depot. And we could have walked in. I was going to walk in with our Navy SEALs, and we were going to give them 24 hours to get out of our embassy, or they were going to have the biggest ashtray in the Middle East. Of course, Pastor Carter rejected that plan. And you know, to tell you how far he had no understanding of what Khomeini and Islamic fundamentalism was all about. In fact, I was the only one that was supporting the Shah. But he thought, well, the Ayatollah is a religious man, and I'm a religious man, and we'll be able to communicate. I mean, did you ever hear of anything, totally off the wall? The next time we had an opportunity to change the course of history was on a Marine barracks bombing in Beirut, October 23rd, 1983. And I will tell you, we knew exactly who did the bombing. We knew the orders came from the foreign ministry in Tehran to the Iranian ambassador in Damascus, We used to be able to monitor that communication, who then called in all the leadership and told them, one, concentrate on your attacks on the multinational force, but take a spectacular action against the United States Marines. That message from NSA came out 27 September, almost 4 weeks before the attack. I was the deputy chief then. I did not get to see that message until 2 days after the bombing. And I've never been able to find out where was it. Of course, that attack never should have occurred. Nonetheless, we put together the plans. We had the planes loaded. And we were going to, the Islamic Amal and Hezbollah had taken over the Lebanese Army Sheikh Abdullah barracks above Baalbek on the 16th of September with the help of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. And we were going to make the Sheikh Abdullah barracks look like a plowed cornfield in Iowa. We were going to wipe out the core group of Hezbollah, and we were going to send a very definite message. We had the planes loaded, and I'm glad you're all sitting down, because the one who sabotaged the strike was none other than our Secretary of Defense, Caspar Weinberger. In the interest of time, I can't get into all of the details, but he did it not only once, but twice. Because after that, if you recall, the French barracks were blown up and they lost 58 of their military personnel. And they wanted to do a combined strike. And I told Jerry Tuttle, who was the Carrier Strike Force commander out there, I said, share the plans with the French commander. President Reagan approved the strike, and Weinberger wouldn't issue the execute order. You're saying not possible. I personally talked to George Shultz and Bud McFarlane, who was the National Security Advisor. They both told me they called Weinberger and pleaded with him to release the message. He wouldn't do it. Who got to him, what got to him, I've never been able to figure out. I can tell you this, there's a very powerful Iranian Washington lobby. Whether that was it or not, I don't know. But the French went ahead. They dropped 2 500-pound bombs and killed the goat. Now, if you read Reagan's diary, what it says in there, 2 things. One, for the first strike, he said, oh, we didn't have, the intelligence wasn't good enough. Well, that's pure BS. We had guys inside the barracks, we had photographs, we had everything. We were going to give them a proper send-off for their, so I wanted to make sure they got a good ride to Mecca. It is really distressing, because what came out of that? Our failure to respond. They killed 241 of our military personnel and we did nothing. And what happened? It became Osama bin Laden's rallying cry. The Americans can't suffer casualties, they will cut and run. And in the eyes of the Middle East, that's exactly what we did. And my heart and soul goes out to those guys, those Marines, the Army, and there were some sailors in there who paid the ultimate price. And we did nothing to redeem that action. The next time was during the Gulf Tanker War, 86, 87. I was Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet then. And we had been planning since October of 86, a plan to shut Iran down. If you recall, Iran was in a life and death struggle with Iraq. The boots on the ground were the Iraqi army. All right. And even during that time, Iran continued to conduct attacks against us with no response. So we had this window of opportunity where we had two carrier battle groups, a battleship battle group, and an amphibious ready group, all coming together the latter part of August of 87. I briefed Weinberger at my headquarters in June. We briefed the chairman and so forth and so on. We were ready. We could have shut Iran down. We were going to march up the Gulf and take out every facility they had, including the Bushehr nuclear power plant. So you wouldn't have to be worried about their nuclear power or energy program. And all of that is just nonsense. Their proven reserves will only last another 250 years, so they need an alternative source of energy like a hole in the head. Well, long story short, we couldn't get the execute orders. And you all may remember, several months after that, we accidentally shot down an Iranian civilian airliner. It killed about a couple hundred. And what was the reaction? The Ayatollah Khomeini said, "I am drinking from the chalice of poison. I must sue a truce with Saddam Hussein because the Americans have shown they're coming in on the side of Iraq. I have to protect the theocracy." Well, think of what we could have done had we gone ahead with the strike. We would have brought down the whole theocracy, and all of this kabuki dance we've been going through for the last several years never had to happen. But hopefully there are lessons learned out of this, but I'm not overly confident. Oh. Now, wait a minute. I've got to make a couple of other points here. Let me jump ahead. Let me just say a couple of words about this latest agreement with Iran. It's a travesty. It's a total sellout. And of course, for Secretary Kerry, that's no problem. Of course, this is the second time he has sold out his country. And for President Obama, this is his Neville Chamberlain moment of peace in our time. Ridiculous. Now, I've got to take you back to 2008 when President Obama was candidate Obama. And I've always said these negotiations were a total sham. And what he did in the middle of 2008, he opened up a secret channel to the Ayatollah Khomeini. The secret channel was Ambassador William G. Miller. And the message was, don't sign an agreement with Bush. Wait until I'm president. You will get a much better deal. Well, he certainly proved that, didn't he? You will like my policies. I am your friend. This borders on treason. And here he is, sending this to the world's leading sponsor of state-sponsored terrorism, a country that's been at war with the United States for over 35 years and has caused the loss of thousands of American lives, including 1/3 of our troops in Iraq, are directly attributed to Iran. But you Americans should never forget, it was the key material and training support Iran gave to the 9/11 hijackers that permitted them to carry out the attack. That support was crucial. Had they not provided it, that attack could not have been carried out, and 3,000 innocent Americans who were doing nothing more than going to work would be alive today. And our president is telling him, I am your friend. Unbelievable. One last thing, Frank. Now, sit down. I want to jump ahead, because you know our military's in decline, it's unilateral disarming and so forth. But compounding all that is the social engineering that has been imposed on our military. They are using our military as a social engineering laboratory. And the people that are doing it, of course, have never been in the military. I doubt they've ever set foot on a military base, and probably never will, and never will serve in the military. And some of these social engineers are really debilitating. The removal of don't ask, don't tell. Forcing women into combat. And I got to tell you, there are many viable roles for women in the military. Combat is not one of them. My last point, Frank, don't get too nervous. You probably all read about Ash Carter, our Secretary of Defense, removing the restrictions on transgenders serving in the military. It's mind-boggling. Dr. Frank McHugh, who was the senior psychologist at Johns Hopkins, says this is atrocious. He said those sponsors have got to stop treating this like it's a civil right issue. He said this is a mental issue, and with understanding and proper treatment, they can be returned to normal lives. And that's what has to be done. There's a study done in Sweden. They followed 324 who went through the ultimate. And they found out they had, after years, serious mental problems. And their suicide rate was 20-fold times that of normal individuals. The military does not have to be subjected to that. So, and before Frank collapses in his chair, let me tell you, it's great to be with you all, and I look forward to your questions.
As you can tell, disciplining a four-star is a challenge. We'll take a couple of questions, which you will answer briefly. Please, sir.
How's that, Frank?
Yes, Admiral, Jim Webb is a Democratic candidate
Yeah.
for president, and he's vacillated between Republican and Democrat, and you had a chance to work for him. Would you comment to us about your experience, what you think about the man? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because when we were going to do the strike in '87 to shut Iran down, he was one of the individuals that sabotaged the strike. And let me see if I can clean this up a little bit. My view of Webb that was the Secretary of the Navy, was not the Webb that served in Vietnam. Webb, as Secretary, was an egotistical alpha hotel, and I think you can figure that out. He's never held a consistent job, and his next strategic thought will be his first.
Okay.
Pick your one.
Right here. I've got a question. Sorry.
Admiral, I'm retired first sergeant in the Army, active in reserve. I just have one anecdote and one question for you. The anecdote is recently the White House had a celebration for transgendered in the military, and the ones that I saw featured in the Army Times was an Air Force woman who went dressed as a man, and her fiancé, an Army gentleman who went dressed as a woman. I don't know where to go with that, but just kind of a statement of the times. And as far as my question is,
You didn't want me to undress him.
No. But my question for you is, I'm a state representative, and next week at the Legislative Office Building, I have a meeting with a delegation from the People's Republic of Vietnam. Any messages?
Yeah. Well, it's sometimes you have to get in bed with some strange fellows, and that's apparently what we've done here to combat the larger threat, which is represented by China. And China is flexing its muscles. It's developed a navy specifically to fight the United States Navy. And we've got to find ways to balance the strategic equation there. And I want to make one other point going back to transgender. You have to ask yourself, where is our military leadership on all of these social engineering issues? They're violating their oath of office. There's no question about it. However, they've been silenced by the political correctness Gestapo watchdogs. And it really distresses me to see that, because I believe no president could withstand the entire Joint Chiefs of Staff standing up and said, "We're not doing that, and if you go ahead, here's our papers." It wouldn't happen. Great to be with you all.
Thank you. As always.
Frank.
God bless you.